Welcome to Speaking Cinema, serious movie Jibber Jabber, a movie podcast coming to you live from Hollywood, California. But if you were a precog, you'd already know that.
You would have known that already.
Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr. Listen to us Jibber Jabber every single Monday on Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud, amongst other platforms. I am your host, Detective Jibber Jabber. With me, as always, wearing spandex and floating in goo, Kevin.
Spandex and goo, it must be Saturday.
What? Is that goo cold or is it like body temp?
They referred to it as milk in the movie, so I bet it's like, I bet it's cold. But it's chilly.
I feel like it's not very comfortable, but when you're enslaving people, I guess you're not really curious about their comfort.
Comfort seems to be the last thing on their mind.
This week on the Jibber Jabber, Everybody Runs, 2002's Minority Report, continuing this edition of Director's Buffet, selecting choice films directed by the Beard himself, Steven Spielberg. Spielbergo. I like Director's Buffet. I think we should...
I hammered that out one day, and I think it's a good one.
I think we're going to remember that. This film stars Tom Cruise, Colin Farrell, Max von Sydow, Samantha Morton, Tim Blake Nelson, Lois Smith, Catherine Morris, and Peter Stormare.
Stormare.
Peter Stormare. We're not going to change that. Written by Scott Frank and John Cohen, based on the short story by legendary author Philip K. Dick. A prolific writer, a lot of stuff based on his stuff, a lot of it not really the same as what he wrote.
Yep.
Produced by DreamWorks, Cruise Wagner Productions, and Blue Tulip Productions, distribution 20th Century Fox. If you're not familiar, the special pre-crime division can stop murders before they happen, thanks to a trio of psychics. But things get hairy when their lead detective is accused of a future murder. What a sci-fi premise. You're accused of future murder. I think the movie should have been called Future Murder.
It should have been called Future Murder.
This film, Minority Report, was in development for 7 years, originally planned as a sequel to Total Recall with John DeBont in the director's chair.
Director of Speed.
Oh.
And cinematographer on Die Hard.
Oh.
He's kind of Luc Besson's little family
enclave of
weirdo French guys who love Hollywood action movies.
Yeah. The script got into the hands of Tom Cruise, who sent it along to Steven Spielberg. I was going to say friend Steven Spielberg, but I don't know what their relationship is.
I don't know. They've never worked together before until this movie.
After many rewrites, Writers Guild clashes, and delays, Cruise and Spielberg finally got the script where they wanted it, and the film got made. 3 years before the production began, Spielberg gathered a team of professional scientists, engineers, and a host of other smarty smarts to brainstorm what the world would look like in the year 2054. These talks included some of the things that are available today: touchscreens, retina and fingerprint scanners, self-driving cars, gesture controls. Still waiting on the surveillance spiders? Still waiting for those?
Still waiting.
Still waiting for drugs that look like Pez dispensers?
Yep, just suck them down.
This is from my memory watching this movie in 2000 whatever when it came out, when I first saw it. Spoiler alert. We're still waiting for...
We got targeted advertising though. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, but not on that level.
Not at the level. Everything in this is heightened to a certain degree, but we are getting this stuff.
And truth be told, I'm not looking forward to plants that can move on their own.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. Terrifying.
This film spawned a video game, which no one played, and a TV series, which no one watched.
This movie was a hit. They botched the video game. That's for sure.
And the TV show was bizarrely timed.
Yes, it was. Because it came out last year.
Yeah.
So, strange.
And I feel like sci-fi shows, that's hard.
It is tough. Because your average person is just going to say, sci-fi show, I don't care. And then sci-fi fans are going to really pick it apart.
Well, I think sci-fi fans, if you're going to do a remake, you got to do something like, what's the one with Starbuck and... all those people.
Battlestar Galactica.
You gotta do something about Battlestar Galactica, which is just straight up bold, right? So it's like sci-fi, but it's a remake, or a sequel or whatever it was. Yeah. It's but it's super bold. Or you gotta do something like The 100, which is also an adaptation, but again, very bold. You gotta be very bold, and I feel like that didn't read as very bold.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Despite
just,
Wilder Ramarama's best choices.
he tries.
As of this recording, Minority Report available on digital HD, purchase, rental on Amazon and iTunes, as well as Blu-ray, DVD. Maybe a VHS copy exists somewhere, don't worry about that.
2005 was the official death of VHS, so this is probably on VHS somewhere.
I believe it.
If you look hard enough.
Kev, have you heard of / seen this movie?
Sure have. Seen it more times than I can count, oddly enough. I have seen this movie
A favorite?
a lot. I enjoy it, I remember seeing it. I saw it in theaters twice
Wow.
when it came out.
Wow.
Bought the DVD. I remember that the DVD had 2 discs and had a ton of special features, and that was like DVD was still kind of new-ish. Like in my part of the world, we were just getting DVD players.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like my demo disc of like, if you haven't got a DVD player yet, this is what you can get. Like the picture was good, the special features were amazing, and it was just cool. So
this probably came out on DVD in like 2005 or 6.
Oh, probably.
2003.
Probably.
This is 2003. So yeah, this is a time where you go to Blockbuster and there's a DVDs mixed in with the VHSs.
Yep.
So yeah. So a title like this would be an argument as to why you would want DVDs and not.
Mm-hmm.
I saw this movie in the theater. I remember having mixed opinions of it when I first saw it. I was kind of like, it was good, but we'll see if that was justified. Maybe it was.
We'll find out.
I guess my assumption is that it's not, but maybe it was. I have not seen it since, so I have not seen this since whatever of 2002.
Gotcha.
I'm a tender age of, 16? 15 at the time?
Yeah. It's about how old I would have been.
As we've discussed in our previous episodes, Spielberg has tackled many different genres in his career. Many types of sci-fi films, whimsical, E.T., to terrifying, Jurassic Park, cerebral AI. Minority Report combines elements of all 3. What do you think of his sci-fi work? And then, you got upcoming, we're going to do Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is kind of like a mystery. I don't want to use the word thriller because I really don't know what that word means.
Sure. We had a long discussion about the word thriller.
Let's have it again.
I mean, his sci-fi work is very interesting because his style just fits in really well with that. Not his aesthetic style and his storytelling acumen. It really, you can kind of plug and play it anywhere. And he has a bold enough imagination that he can get these really vivid worlds, even if it's like E.T., where it's modern day in 1982, but it's still a very well realized world. But you'll never mistake it for Minority Report, which is a very bold and ambitious vision of the future, I think. So it's
I think
his imagination seems to really go into overdrive when he does sci-fi, and I mean it's I think for the benefit for the most part.
I think that the takeaway generally is that he is a guy who has a varying aesthetic, kind of what you just said, and he's powerful enough to get that on the screen. So none of them look like each other, and none of them feel like each other unless he wants them to.
Yeah.
So I think it just speaks to his power. Like, if he wants to make a kids alien movie, it feels like a kids world, and if he, for better or for worse, and if he wants to make a in the future science fiction movie, it feels like, I mean, like in this movie, from my memory of it, it's like, it's science fiction-y, you have like self-driving cars and touchscreens and weird tanks full of goo, but houses still look like houses. They don't look like, crazy. They look like houses in suburban Washington, D.C. or whatever.
Exactly.
They don't look like
we've got kitchens,
floating
we've
cubes.
got bathrooms, we've got cottages, we've got all those things.
It's a world that
people aren't wearing like silver jumpsuits. They got black t-shirts, they got black pants, they got they don't have these crazy wacky fashions.
Right.
Right. So it's a much more. The technology is really bold, but it's grounded just enough that we can believe that it doesn't look like a 1950s vision of the future. Moon colonies. And stuff.
Although I would like to see that as a movie, a retro future movie.
It could totally work. So they tried that with Sky Captain in the World Tomorrow, I think.
Yeah,
but didn't do very well.
Do you think? I mean, his contemporaries Kubrick and Ridley Scott. Do you think that Like, do you want to compare those? Do you think it's a fair comparison to them?
I think they do them for different reasons. Kubrick's sci-fi was very cerebral. I mean, you could argue I would argue he only made 2 sci-fi movies, and that's 2001 and Clockwork Orange. And those are 2001 very cerebral, meant to evoke much different things, and then Clockwork Orange and commentary on society more than anything. Mm-hmm. Spielberg, I think his first job is always to entertain and then tickle your mind with the stories too. And then Ridley Scott is always, he just tries a lot of different things in a lot of different eras, and I think each story is kind of independent of itself.
Well, and I think really Scott's an interesting case to sci-fi because, he makes something like The Martian, which is like this survival thing and about how...
Something you'd think Spielberg would make.
Right. Yeah, and it's about using technology to survive in your wits, and then you make something like Alien, which is the opposite, which is about hopelessness in space, right? It's like... they're weird...
And then you've got Blade Runner, also based on a film.
Yeah, and you got Blade Runner, yeah.
That is... a dystopian society, which, according to that movie, we're only 3 years away from in LA here, so...
I can't wait for my flying
Japanese
car.
takeover.
Yeah.
But it's, that's a very rain-soaked, what does it mean to be human story, and it's... I wouldn't say it's not entertaining, but it's not going for the same thing like Minority Report is going for. It's a much headier story.
Speaking of Philip K. Dick... constant source of Hollywood material, even though sometimes it's just his name and not any actual thing. A good example of this is Blade Runner,
yep.
Which is also a good movie. There's also some shitty movies like Paycheck. Are you familiar? Do you read Philip K. Dick? I mean, for the sci-fi nerds of the world, that is like the Bible. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, he's the guy. I have read quite a few of his works.
Interesting.
His works are both easy to understand and I think kind of impenetrable in a weird way. Like, he's not talking over your head during the books, but like a lot of the concepts I think can sometimes get a little muddled. And I think his backstory is really interesting of how like, he started out kind of just writing much simpler stories and then really got hard into drugs and like lived in this flop house with a bunch of people.
Really?
And wrote a bunch of, like, A Scanner Darkly is completely based on, like, he pulled a lot of people from that experience.
Another terrible movie.
I'd defend that one. But,
oh my God.
Yeah, it's one of those movies I liked it enough, but I can totally see why somebody would hate it. So I won't hold it against you. Anyways, but yeah, he lived kind of a rough life and was in the throes of addiction in the last few years of his life. He actually never even got to see Blade Runner completed, but they said they showed him a visual effects reel because they were kind of in the midst of that before he died, and he's like, you guys got in my head and got exactly what I envisioned Blade Runner to be. Or his book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. So yeah, I've read a lot of his stuff. I wouldn't say he's my favorite author, but I think why Hollywood likes him so much is his concepts are really good launching points. So he comes up with really good ideas, and then you can build an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie around that. So you start with the basics and then grow from there. I think his books can get a lot more philosophical and a lot less structured, but the ideas are easy to make something out of. So I think that's why Hollywood just keeps going back to him. And he had lots of ideas. He's got lots of short stories and lots of novels.
Yeah. I just think that there's a lot of, like you got the iRobots of the world.
That's Isaac Asimov.
Oh, is it? Oh,
yeah.
You're right.
Which, talk about disconnect between source material and movie.
Yeah, it's always a bummer. It's always a bummer when the movie is bad and the source material is good.
Yep.
Because you're like, you could have just done this and it would have been good. But you changed it and now it sucks.
Changed it to the point where it's a movie in name only, which I feel iRobot is. Mm-hmm. So it's... Yeah. With Philip K. Dick, they at least keep some... In the best ones, they keep a lot of the core ideas and the aesthetics in place. Mm-hmm. So, but then you get something like Paycheck, where it's like... we take just the absolute basic idea, and then we're gonna apply it to this shitty action script that we have, and then we can slap his name on it and sell it.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with his writings, but like we were saying, I want people to respect the source material, or conversely, divulge from it in such a way that is bold filmmaking.
Yeah.
I think that's the thesis of my life, is like, I'd rather have something be bold and fail than try to make everyone happy and suck.
Yep. It's but if everyone's happy and it sucks and it makes money, that's always the key right there. Yeah. Interestingly, I have not read the short story Minority Report is based on.
Interesting. Maybe we will before this podcast gets completed, but probably not. Kev, you believe in fate? I'm gonna go ahead and say hard no.
I'm gonna say no, but I had kind of an interesting experience the other day.
Well, first of all, what are we defining fate as?
So fate is that everything you do is predetermined and you can't change your life, basically, right?
But are we specifically saying from a mathematical sense or from like a religious, spiritual sense?
In our world, let's keep it mathematical. Of like, we have no control over what we do,
right?
So I had kind of an interesting experience the other day. Down the street from my office is a little breakfast place. And they got breakfast burritos, bagels, coffee, whatever. Some days I go and get a breakfast burrito.
What are you messing around with, Kev? Is that part of the story?
The steak breakfast burrito at this place is pretty good, actually, for a little kind of hole-in-the-wall breakfast joint.
All right.
Anyways. So one morning I was like, do I want to not bring my breakfast and get a breakfast burrito, or do I want to go out to lunch? And I just kind of thought about it for a second. I was like, I'll just go out to lunch today, whatever. That morning, a car accident happened, and one of the cars went right up on that sidewalk right by the bagel place. Didn't hit the bagel place, but it's exactly where I walked to get to the bagel place. And I'm like, if I had chosen to get a breakfast burrito that day, I would have been hit by a car.
Well,
I don't know. It's potentially, it's like, it could happen.
It definitely could happen.
Because it was right at the time where I would have gone and get my breakfast burrito.
But that person, maybe they went up on the curb because they knew no one was around.
No, they the way the thing happened is they got hit and then they were moved towards the curb, and then they just it was so quick that they couldn't stop, and then just went up on the curb and then hit a tree. Thankfully nobody got hit, and no businesses got plowed into or anything. But that's where I walked to go get my breakfast burrito. So I just had kind of an interesting thinking about, if I had made one decision different, would that have just absolutely changed my life?
Yeah.
Or was I always predetermined to not get a breakfast burrito that day? It just got me thinking about it. It was right when I watched Minority Report. So
I think. All right, so let's rewind for a second. So I think that there's an argument that we can make if you understood there's a math and a science to the whole world, right? Everything has equations and whatever. And there's a theory that it's a tremendous amount of math, right, to understand how things work.
Yes. But
if you understood the equation of how the universe worked, right, of everything, gravity, people's emotions, how nature versus nurture, if you could boil that all down to all equations and you could understand the universe for one moment, then you would be able to predict everything that would ever happen, right?
Yes.
So then choice is an illusion, and that the fact that we're making this podcast, who listens to it and who doesn't, that's all predetermined to, happen. But I feel like if that is I don't want to promote anti-intellectualism, but you can't live your life that way, because then you would just be constantly waiting for things to happen to you, and you wouldn't feel
exactly.
Whether or not that's true or not, we are incapable of that level of information, so it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if that's true, because we're not living a life influenced by that math in any real tangible way to our own. You tell someone something and and you'll expect an expectation of what they'll say, and sometimes you'll be surprised and they'll go one way, sometimes another way, sometimes they're not listening. So I just feel like that doesn't really matter in the long run. And then when it comes to there's a self-importance to I like the idea that I can't die on a plane because You know, there's things I gotta do still.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But I think that I have enough life experience to be like, you know, shitty things happen to people, and you know, there's not really any. I don't know. I don't think anything happens for a reason. I don't think there's any spiritual, like, you know, this bad thing happened, but it happened so I would learn this. I think that is the beauty of life, is human choice, right? Something bad happens to you and you choose to learn from it.
Yep.
You choose to grow. You know, you have a shitty experience of high school. High school sucks. So in life, you learn from that and you become a better person. That's a choice, because you could have chosen to be shitty. You know what I mean? And bitter.
And that's why we have like religions too. It's because some people don't want that choice. They want somebody to tell them exactly
Right.
how to feel at all times.
Right.
So everybody processes that differently.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a hard thing to be like, nothing is predetermined and anything can happen to you at any time.
Yeah.
You know, that's a tough way to walk, but that's probably how it is. You know?
I do think that's how it is. I don't think about it all the time, because yeah, it'd probably be a pretty big bummer.
You'd be sitting on the couch all
Right.
day.
And I think at the same time, by not thinking about it, you miss out on the quiet miracles of life. We all drive these 3,000-pound machines around, and what separates a machine from you is a 6-inch curb. But people don't jump that curb. People don't kill people. People they make the right choices. They stop at stoplights. They drive well. You know what I mean? Like, that's a quiet miracle of life that we never appreciate because we're too hung up on like the bad things that happen. Mm-hmm. Glad you didn't get hit by a car.
Yes. So it just got me really thinking about it with watching Minority Report, and then that was a conscious decision I made that didn't affect that one at all, I don't think, but had to stand there and if I didn't get hit by the car, I would have been involved in like talking to the police about that accident, trying to help people get, like I would have been part of that, and then being twined in somebody else's life for whatever minuscule amount of time. So it's just, it was an interesting experience. One choice kind of made all the difference.
Something to think about. Let's keep that in mind when people complain about cars. I watch Jay Leno's YouTube show a lot, and he's like, he's talking about a 56 Chevy, and he's like, you look at the front of this car, it's so great. Like, nowadays people want it to be that if you get hit by a car, you just roll off the hood and keep walking. And it's like, yeah, fucking idiot, because people get hit by cars and they die.
So
what? Duh. What are you talking about?
That's the insular world that Jay Leno lives in.
Well, it's an insular that all rich male men live in. So. Calling you out, rich male men. Fuck you.
Donald Trump supporters, most of you, I'm guessing.
So, long story short, don't believe in fate.
It's just, you'll just ruin your life. So.
Steak burrito, Jay Leno's cars, no fate. So on this downer of a note, you want to go watch a movie about fate?
Let's get in on some Minority Report here.
Here we go! And we're back. Kev, how'd you watch this movie?
Watched my Blu-ray copy of Minority Report at my house.
I believe I watched a DVD copy from the library.
Probably the DVD I had back in the day. But I did upgrade. It took them a while to get this on Blu-ray, actually. It did not come out right away in the Blu-ray boom. So
they had to...
They added a lot of special features on it, too, which I have not watched them all, but they are very interesting.
Fox, too busy putting out... they don't do Blade Runner. Too busy putting out Alien quadrology sets to...
Exactly, yep.
Begging... Who's the guy who directed Alien 3?
David Fincher.
Begging David Fincher to come back to do the commentary. He's like, nope.
I like that he has enough clout that he can just be like, fuck off.
Nope. He's thrown his hat in with Sony.
Yep.
Kev, you had watched this movie a bunch as a kid?
Seen it a bunch of times.
What did you think of rewatching it now?
It still holds up for me. It's just an enjoyable, just as pure action filmmaking, it's enjoyable. But then you get really interesting ideas too. It's extremely well made. The cast is very good. I still enjoy it. Just the same way I did when it came out.
My initial thoughts are, I think it's a well-made science fiction mystery. And I think it is above average.
I think that mystery element helps it too. Like, that really frames the plot in an interesting way.
And I don't know what it is. I like it fine, but I don't connect with it in a significant way. And I think the movie is very much in the middle. I like left, right, up, down, in and out, but I think it's in the center. And it never goes too bold, but then when it tries to go a little bit bold, I think it ends up being gross. And I don't like that.
Like,
Getting
getting his eyeballs switched out.
his eyeballs switched. I mean, there's a significant problem I have with this movie with it being like a kind of a gross out movie and not really earning that.
Okay.
And I feel like it does feel long in the end. I think if you kind of feel like once the twists start to happen and stuff, you're like, good, but then they have some slower scenes and it's just like, I think they think this is more of a thriller or something than it is, and it's like, you know, when Tom Cruise's ex-wife is like helping Max von Sydow put on a tie, you're like, fucking just yo, this man's murdered people. But it is, well, it's the penalty of being above average, where you're not the best of all time, but you're not bad, and you kind of get no credit for being above average. You know what I mean? Like, you know, if you're a B student in school, it's like you're not an A student and you're not an F student, so you're just like, okay, cool.
You don't fuck up, basically.
Yeah.
So
you don't rock the boat, but that kind of
hit a home run, no. But if you hit a double, you're useful too.
Right, but you're never gonna be a rock star.
Exactly.
You know, you're never gonna be the guy who's too drunk to bat. You know what I mean? And everyone wants to talk about him.
You leave Wade Boggs out of this.
Duh. First things first. So many guys from that thing in this movie.
Yep.
So many.
It's a stacked cast. You got Peter Stormare, Fargo, that other thing, Fargo, Constantine. You know, so many films.
Yeah.
Max von Sydow. You know, worked with Ingmar Bergman. Been a character actor for a long time. Is currently in Game of Thrones. Was in Star Wars. Like, just absolutely just chugging away out there.
Yeah, just a million. That dude who was he was in the Howling Commandos, the Captain America movie.
Oh, Neil McDonough.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those big blue eyes.
Big blues, and pretty fit in this movie. I think he's looking svelte. You know, he had to
in good shape.
So
gotta be pre-crime. The guy Jim Rash, who plays the dean on Community, had a scene cut from this movie, but he was in it too. He talks about the day he shot it, and he thought he was gonna have like 2 lines, and then like the day before he got a huge chunk of lines, and like he actually shot with Spielberg. Like, this wasn't just B unit stuff, but he said he was not prepared at all, and like meeting Spielberg and working with Spielberg for the first time. So,
well, he got put in a bad situation if if they dump a bunch of lines on you, like, memorize this all by tomorrow,
Exactly.
and you're like, I didn't ever talk to him about it. You know,
it
how
was
does he
like
want it?
it was like technical jargon too. It wasn't
the best
we
shit.
normally talk about.
The best shit right
Yeah.
there.
They were like pre-crime dispatchers, I think, was like his role. So yeah, his scene got cut. But again, another guy who's in that thing, he was in this movie at one point. But,
And I think everyone acts well.
yeah, there's nobody's going way over the top.
Well, the one guy who's the archivist in the archives.
Oh, Tim Blake Nelson.
Yeah, he's
You don't
fucking.
like him at all?
He's hamming. He's giving Ham a hammy name. You know what I mean? But everyone else, I think Cruise does a good job. I think Colin Farrell does a very good job.
Yep.
I think Max von Sydow does a good job.
I think his wife does a really good job.
Yeah,
too,
yeah, and
so.
she's kind of, you know, a bit of an underwritten.
A little bit, but she does a lot with just a few.
Oh, and the precog girl
Samantha Morton
does really well, and that could have gone wrong so easily.
Yes,
That could have gone Bobo for Bobo's bonkers, but it doesn't. Also, how can she walk after 10 years of being in a pool? Anyways, sci-fi.
science fiction.
So I want to talk about sci-fi. When I first saw this movie as a teenager, the tech seemed so distant and out of touch, and just like, what are you talking about? This will never exist, right? Not in our lifetimes. Well, I walked out of this movie, I said, there'll never be a black president in my lifetime, and there'll never be a touchscreen. And I was wrong on both accounts, Kev.
Didn't even take till 2054 to get both of those things.
Right. And, you know, some of this stuff exists, and some of it's almost ready, and some of it, if it came out, you wouldn't be surprised, right? So, gesture controls, those exist. Yep. Not on this exact level, but you would not be surprised if it got to that very shortly.
Exactly.
We're almost at the self-driving car, and we're almost at cars having like no safety features and being just cabins, that's where people want it to go. Like that's where Elon Musk is eventually wanting to take the car, where it's like it's just a cube you get into and it has all your stuff in it.
Yep.
And you just hang out in there while it takes you where you want to go. Goes and parks itself. Like there's talk of you go somewhere and your car will meet you there.
Yeah. This was 2054 in this movie, and we've exponentially grown in the time since it's come out. It's amazing. Like, it's mind blowing. It really is. Like, mind blowing is a word that's thrown around a lot. I'm just stunned at how much this movie got right about where technology is going.
And if those like weird mechanical spider things, like if I saw a video of that on
somebody's making that.
If I saw a Kickstarter of that tomorrow, I'd be like, all right, sounds right. Not surprised there.
Would I want little mechanical spiders that can spy on us? No, but I bet we can make them.
But we have drones, so it's like we're almost there.
That's kind of the primitive version of that, right? Is a big
yeah, and I don't think I wouldn't assume that it would be able to do exactly what it does in this movie at first, But yeah, I'm not. If that came out, I wouldn't be fucking blown away.
Yep.
I'd be like, well, I would be blown away, but I wouldn't be. It wouldn't be. Yeah, it just makes sense.
Yep.
It's also hilarious that no Wi-Fi exists on this world. That's one thing that they couldn't foresee. You gotta throw your data on some glass and then put that glass from this computer to this computer.
Yeah, that's true.
So good.
But
it's very it's physical and very visual.
There's too much data. You can't put it just on any Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it's very visual, so it's like it makes sense.
Yeah. I said, like, the targeted advertising we talked about in the first half, where it's like, John Anderton, you need a Guinness. It's like, we get that on our internet, where it's your search history. It influences what ads you see.
Also, holograms becoming a thing, too, and augmented reality.
Retinal scanning, like, on a consumer level, that used to be super high security retinal scan. It's like your iPhone can do that now.
Mm-hmm.
So
retinal scans your iPhone?
No, maybe not iPhone.
But you could do it if you do the thumbprint.
Yeah, you can do thumbprint.
The world feels lived in, which is interesting because I think you'd be with such a technically advanced world. You'd be I think tempted to have this real minimalism aesthetic, right? Where it's just an Apple store everywhere you go.
Yeah.
This predating Apple stores, but you get my point. And you look at Tom Cruise's apartment and it's full of stuff. You look at people's houses and they still have faucets and things. It's like even now. You could have a faucet installed in your house. It's just like, you put your hand underneath it and it just gives you 45 seconds worth of water. But people don't have that. They have regular...
It's got regular old faucets.
Right. People have regular keys. You know what I mean? Like, you could have an electronic key lock on your door. You just choose not to because,
What's wrong with the key?
Right.
It's like keys still work. Mm-hmm. And they'll probably work 50 years from now. I bet most people still have a key.
Yeah.
But, and I think I think the movie captures Washington, D.C. really well in that the areas where people work is, like, pretty pristine and white. It's very, like, shiny. But 2 blocks from that, it is, like, grimy ghetto.
Right.
Like, it's not pretty. So they capture that extremely well.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know where to talk about this, but I just like how there hasn't been a murder in such a long time that the people are like, look at all this evidence, we got him. And it's like, no, that's not how fucking murders work. Yep. There's never this orgy of evidence. And like, like the people in DC have kind of lost touch with how murder goes.
Yeah, it's Neil McDonough's character. Colin Farrell asked him, he's like, when was your last murder scene? He's like, I've never worked a murder scene before. But
I like that.
He's got to put the caution tape up and he's got to do that. And it's again, sci-fi should explore an interesting scientific concept, and this is a world where no murder exists. Mm-hmm. How are people, 20 years removed from ever hearing about anybody dying in this city? How can they handle somebody dying? It's just a very interesting perspective on it.
Indeed. I want to talk about the style of this movie. It's interesting because I feel like there's shots in this movie that are very Tony Scott. Very like, where, like the camera's moving around. It's always, you're switching angles.
Very active camera.
Active, moving around. Also, do you think that's hard to do? Do you think that someone's ever shot something where the camera's always doing a circle around the main character and then they get back in the editing room and like, I don't know what the fuck to do with this?
Yep, I'm sure that's happened more than a few times. I bet Tony Scott's had that happen more than a few times. That's why you might want to shoot a little coverage just in case.
Right. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. They do those shots in this movie.
For sure. But it takes a guy like Spielberg to
Steal from Tony Scott.
steal from Tony Scott. The film language is still there. He's not just moving the camera to move the camera. You know, like the tracking shots are giving us information. He's just able to give us a lot of information in like one camera move, what somebody else might need 2 or 3 cuts to pull off. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and finds really interesting shots. Like I always think of the shot where right before he murders Leo Crow, him and Samantha Morton, the precog, or Agatha. Him and Agatha are embracing, and then we get the shot of his reaction, because we need to see that to get the story. We get the shot of her reaction, and then he does a really simple camera move to get Tom Cruise's reaction, but it's this really interesting 2-shot that he nails. And it kind of looks like the precog statue. It kind of looks... There's a lot of interesting things going on. He does it in just one really quick camera move. So there's a lot of stuff like that throughout it. So
I agree.
Yeah, it's I think it's one of Spielberg's most lively, imaginative films.
I also think that the drug dealing scene is very Blade Runner.
Oh yeah, absolutely. With the blind guy, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because that's the grimy part of DC, but you know, there's still the neon ads, but yeah, lots of rain, and then these drugs that look straight out of the future, little capsules. But yeah, it's absolutely a Blade Runner-esque shot. Grimy.
And yeah, I mean, there's that one great scene where the spiders are searching for him, and we're floating over walls, you know, and we're like watching 2 people fuck, and we're watching some lady make some ramen, and you know, that's a really great shot.
I mean, it's funny on the special features they talk about. We're talking to John Williams, who did the score, and I think this is one of his better scores too. That spider theme is just, it feels like you got little spiders on you, and they're talking about that exact shot where they're going over everything, and he's like, "Oh, that scene was just so much fun for me to do." Hard cut to Janusz Kaminski, the cinematographer, and he goes, "That scene was not fun for me to do." It's very funny because he talks about, you know, the camera is just locked down on this rig to move. He's like, you can't hide a light anywhere. You gotta frame shots in a way that makes sense, but you have to be able to rotate, and you have to put CGI in these things. He's like, that shot was so fucking hard for me. So
I remember
it totally works.
I remember as a kid not liking that shot, being like, they're cheating. They're just going over the set. Who cares?
Exactly. And this to me feels like Spielberg just having a lot more fun with this.
Yeah.
And I think he realizes that this story, it's not Schindler's List. You don't need to be this heavy burden thing. It's like, this can just be a fun, intelligent popcorn movie, you know? Which we were talking about on our year episode. We were talking about that. That's kind of a movie I want to see too. Like, you can make a popcorn movie, but you can also make it really smart. But you don't have to be this heavy, dark burden on it the whole time too. It can just be a fun, joyous thing. And I think that spirit really runs through it. And I think that's why I still really connect to it.
Yeah, and I think style-wise, it's not stylish, but has a style of its own. If I'm using the word style too much,
I think he gets that from Hitchcock in this movie, where it's that there's a definite style to it, but yeah, it's not overblown, and it's not doing it just for the sake of doing it. Like, everything has a purpose, but it's just got that little extra something to it, you know? I think the mall scene is pure Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Where they're finding all the different ways to avoid the pre-crime guys, and he's got Agatha with him, and she can actively see the future and like knows exactly where they need to go. And it's like, oh, how are they gonna get away with this? Oh, the balloon guy stands in front of them, you know? So yeah, that's just pure Hitchcock suspense.
Also, I want to say, other than like Iron Man, I've never seen jetpacks done this way so well, where people feel like they have a real weight and there's a thrust that's keeping them afloat. Which is always the problem with, like, I feel like in the 90s especially, this was always the problem with like people jumping really high, is that they would jump, and the way that the counterweighting would work, it was as if they had no weight to them.
They would kind of just raise their feet and then jump.
Right.
Like almost float.
Exactly. It wasn't like a jump as if it was so powerful it would just thrust you up. And I think Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon use that to its benefit, where it's the idea is that they can make themselves light, so they just push off.
Exactly. And they build a world around that. that.
Yeah.
But that's, again, the special effects they use for that in a lot of movies in the 90s doesn't look like that. It just looks like, oh, you're on a wire, you know? And yeah, it's the jetpacks in this. You know, one, Spielberg does a lot with them. He's got people hanging off of them, flying through tight corridors, smashing into things. They really do have this weight, and it feels like there's a 200-pound person being carried by it.
Right.
Know? So
I do like that a lot.
Yeah.
I want to talk about storytelling.
Yes.
There's a lot of good small things. So, Colin Farrell's meeting with the ex-wife. You know, she's like, "You want coffee?" And then he's like, "I'll take cream and sugar." And then he asks a dickish question, and she's like, "Turns out we're all out of cream and sugar."
Yep.
That small little thing where she's like, "No, I'm not being pushed around by you, motherfucker." You know what I mean? Like, no way. You know, and that's like, that moment I was just like, ooh, that's a good moment. You know, that's something to learn from right there, where it's like, why would she be nice to him now that he's revealed himself to be an asshole?
Exactly. So it's just those little character moments that you might try and get in a silent look or an additional cut to show like she's annoyed. But yeah, just that simple, you know what, we don't have cream and sugar. Take your fucking coffee. And it says a lot about her character, too. It's like, she's not going to be this wayfish thing to get pushed around. She's a tough woman. So.
And when the scene where the lady who designed Precog, you know, like, huh?
Iris Hinneman.
Yes. When Iris is, it almost doesn't work because she is just pure monologuing there. But we've built up this premise of mystery, and we've built up the thriller elements and the mystery elements so well that we want her to say all the things she's saying, right? And I think that is the difference between a B movie and an A movie when it comes to science fiction, where it's like, in a B movie,
that would have been an opening crawl with either Tom Cruise saying it or somebody else saying, like, the precogs were 3 children who could see murders, and we harness their power.
Or it would become right before the first act break, or right before the third act break, where it's like, well, we need a clue in the audience at this point. And it's like, no, make us want it.
Yep.
You know, it's like not like the Creature from the Black Lagoon, where it's like, we found this fish scale hand. Well, you know, the isolated nature of it's like, wait.
Yep.
Don't do this.
Yeah, it's, from the structure standpoint, it's show the thing in full force in action. So they have the guy who kills his wife, they stop that murder, and it shows every aspect of it without telling us hardly anything, except we're in the year 2054 and there's these psychics, and that's all we know. Like Danny Whitworth sees them and he's like, who are they? They're the precogs. Oh, okay. And then we see a lot of the machinations going as it's weaved into the story, but then we get to a point where we really can't go any further until we know more.
Exactly, Kevin, exactly.
And that's one of the hardest things to pull off when you're screenwriting, is how do you get to that point? It's a fine balance of giving them just enough so that they're not confused, but you have to string them along to, like, okay, we have to know more at this point.
Well, yeah,
and finding the perfect point to drop it in.
Right. All mystery storytelling predicated on this, right? Mystery, and now we need to know something. So you gotta make the character earn it, and then when he gets it, it's satisfying. Because, you know, that was good.
And then tell it in an interesting way. You know, you set it in a greenhouse, which is, you know, something we have yet to see in this world. Another, like, quaint thing of the past we can toss into this world. Like this just lush greenhouse. You get a great actress like the lady who plays Iris Hinneman. I know she's been in lots of stuff. Can't remember her name off the top of my head. And she can just deliver that monologue with a lot of gusto and, like, a lot of regret, too, because you can tell, like, this is not what she wanted for these kids, but it just completely spun out of control.
Well, but, you know, she did do it.
She did it. Well, you know, she says science gone haywire is, you know, she does not seem to be happy that she invented pre-crime. She may have invented pre-crime, or, like, the concept behind it, but I bet somebody else took it out of her hands, and it's never what she wanted.
That devious Max von Sydow.
It was Max von Sydow!
Speaking of Max von Sydow, does the way the twist is shot is so good, right? Where Colin Farrell is like, I think someone who knew pre-crime did this, and then did it again, and then when you thought it was this, the way the rule book goes, you just throw that away because it's the same footage twice.
Yep.
And then the guy's like, well, it's interesting, but I don't hear the cops coming. Do you? Boom.
Yep.
And you're like, whoa,
That's a hell of a reveal.
There's a real bold filmmaking. I like that a lot. No music, silence. You're just waiting on the horror of that thing. Colin Farrell's character is just dead. He didn't write a note in his own blood or anything. He's just dead.
Yep. And then you get that really cold moment when she's like, she calls him and he goes, oh, and don't tell Danny Whitwer, I don't trust him. And he kind of looks back and he goes, I won't say a word. It's like, man, that's cold.
Yeah, you don't give a shit. But does the twist make sense?
I think so. In that it plays into what Iris is talking about, where their intention was never just to like torture these kids, because the precogs are clearly not in a good state when they're predicting murders. Like, they're basically living out these murders. And Agatha was clearly the one who was the strongest. And the only way he was ever going to do it is through some nefarious means, that her mom cleaned up and wanted her kid back, but he was too far, probably had too much money invested to it, too far along in the process that he can't just give her up. And so he uses the system in a kind of a sick way so that he can keep his vision going. I think that's a powerful view. I think that's a really interesting take on the morality behind this whole thing. It's that.
See, but okay, here's my problem though, and I want to get into the stuff that doesn't work in this movie.
Right.
The problem with that though is that is ignoring the fact that they're like, she just wants her daughter back, right? So it's like an adoption kind of a storyline.
Yeah.
That is not what's happening here. Her daughter is a slave. You took people who are orphans. They were normal children who had bad experiences and had to be in orphanage or, foster care or whatever, and now you've drugged them and they're just floating in a pool of goo.
Yep.
Right? We are not ever dealing with that. And then when she gets out of the goo, you see that she's a fully functional human being. So it's like, why aren't we talking about that? You know what I'm saying?
But they kind of are, because they're saving so many lives, and we haven't had a murder in X number of years. And look at all the good they're doing. Like, all the kids idolize the precogs when he returns to pre-crime. There's like the little tour going on, and the kids they write fan letters to him, and they're deified.
I think they cover themselves with I think it's like patches. They're patching it, right? It's like patches over. It's a patch over the plot hole of the fabric of the film. Did that work? Because the old lady Iris, she kind of admits to this. Like what we just we're using them and stuff. And the guy who takes care of them says it's better to think of them as not human.
Yeah.
But they're never really getting into the idea that this is government slavery.
It's true.
In Washington D.C.
I bet
a place where slavery was very popular at one time.
Pretty norm. If someone like Kubrick or David Fincher made this movie, I bet they would dig into that a lot more. And not make it so much about, is it worth it to enslave 3 people in order to save millions, potentially billions of people, or is it really the story about the precogs,
And it's I think the story ultimately is about Tom Cruise and his personal grief, and it's not really about the world that they've created, which is unfortunate in a sci-fi story, because it's you had this world you created that you could have explored it in that way, where it's the past, because you're in the future, but now we've enslaved people for the better good, which was what slavery has always been about, right? You're fucking these people over to help everyone else, to the people who matter, which is the general public in this case. So it's I don't know. I just feel like that's something that's seeded but never paid off and kind of tucked under the rug so that we can do this other more thrilling story.
And I think, and I do like the ultimate moral conundrum they come up with at the end, though, where it's either you kill me and you're a murderer, but your system works, or you don't kill me and then your system is now flawed in front of the eyes of everybody in the world, and then it falls apart. Like that, they really earned that moment.
I agree with that.
And then an interesting twist where he just kills himself.
Right.
So
which is a argument against the idea of fate, because you always have the ability to end your own life. You always
have the ability to choose. So
yeah,
it's they really do, those 3 points meet extremely well there. Mm-hmm. But I can see where they do kind of gloss over again these people are slaves to the government at this point. So, but they get their redemption. They get to live in their house for the rest of their life.
Hey,
so and read books.
They get 40 acres and a mule. All that scene needed was a mule. So my main problem with this movie is I think a lot of stuff that they seed but never pay off because they're not. And to the movie's credit, they're not interested in the story. They're interested in Tom Cruise's personal thing with his child and all that. It's fair, but is there not an irony that he stops crime but he's a junkie? And I think there's a comment we can make on our relationship as a society to drugs. Whereas to kids, you always tell kids all drugs are bad. All drugs are as bad as all drugs, right? There are no such thing as drugs. Drugs are drug. But if you ask people what they think about cocaine, from just the people that I know, not naming any names, the word fun is the first word and also the last word. So, and I'm not saying I hang out with anyone who does cocaine on any regular basis, but I'm just saying anyone who I ever know who does coke, they're always talking about how great that is. And it's like, they talk about it the way that we talk about Chuck E. Cheese, where it's like, man, when in my younger years, that was some real fun times.
Yep.
So, and listen, I am not someone who has ever done drugs, nor do I am someone who understands anything about any kind of drug. But, it doesn't take a genius to see that our relationship with drugs is diametrically opposed, where on a style level, we condemn them, they're all illegal, everyone hates them, but then everyone loves doing them at the same time. People, drink, and that's a legal drug. Pot is a legal drug in California, at least, and, people feel like they have a need for their drugs, and then prescription drugs is basically replaced, street drugs, right? And so instead of doing coke, it's like I'll just take a bunch of these pills.
Yep. I mean, it's the need for drugs is we're gonna get heavy here on this Minority Report. It's a short-term solution, right? It'll take care of your woes within however long you're high on that drug.
Mm-hmm.
And for Tom Cruise's character, it's the only way he can cope with what he feels is he was responsible for his son's death, because you didn't watch him for 2 seconds, and then his whole life fell apart after that. But it works two ways. It makes him the perfect protagonist because he needs to believe in the system as much as anybody else, or this story kind of falls apart. If you had Rick Deckard in this story, Blade Runner character, I think you'd get to the solution a lot faster. He wouldn't trust that system nearly as much.
Right.
But, Anderton needs to trust the system. And so you both take away his son so that he's making sure that nobody else's son is ever killed or taken away. That's what he's always fighting for. But then you have this dark side where he has no other way to cope with it.
Right.
Helping people isn't enough of him to do it. And so he has to turn to these street drugs in order just to get through the day. Or he just cannot function.
Right. Yeah. So the movie shows this, but doesn't really comment on it in any real way. And I feel like it could have been better if they explored that.
They kind of get it. I don't want to say they gloss over it, but they talk about if you found out that the head detective of pre-crime was this dope fiend, that would tear the thing apart. They talk about that, but they don't really explore it.
Yeah, they don't explore it. Yeah.
In some other version of this movie, instead of Danny Whitwer doing this, there's some private detective going around and trying to expose pre-crime.
I always knew she was a Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to get into, not in any depth, but it seems like in the beginning they start talking about religion and then they kind of drop it. That's another thing I feel like they could explore more. They talk about how Colin Farrell says the power is not with the creator, it's with the priests.
Yeah.
And it's about and I think a lot of this is about dogmatic views on things. Maybe they're not spelling it out. I'm being petty because it's it's about religion is a dogmatic by nature thing, right? Some guy tells you what the story is, and that empowers you in a way. And this is the same thing, right? But they're doing it with science.
Yeah, it's the precogs are telling us exactly what's going to happen. And, that's gospel, in a way. This is going to happen, this is how it is, and this is what we need to do to get there, basically. And it flies in the face of that we have some kind of choice in the matter. Mm-hmm. So, they talk about, the precogs only show what you will do, not what you think about doing. And it's that interesting parable of, are they that powerful? is there nothing? And then Iris explored to like, yeah, they get the general gist of it, but they disagree sometimes, you know? And it is kind of a religious angle of like, well, it could be from this way, it could be this way, we should interpret it exactly this way. No, there's a different way to do it. And do they carry that all the way through the end of the movie? Maybe not quite.
Right.
But I'm okay with it. So.
Well, that's the thing is that
it's
like,
an interesting topic to explore, but I don't think it serves the bare bones story as a whole.
well, because the story is ultimately about corruption in the system, right? Which is kind of the religious thing. It's like the power is not with the science. The problem is with the guy who murders someone to prove to keep the system going.
Yeah.
And that's the real crime. But like we never, we only the movie only talked about this in the context of Tom Cruise being wronged by it. But it's like, if you stop a murder from happening, why imprison anyone, right? They didn't actually do anything. So like, wouldn't the solution for pre-crime be like, maybe you get put on probation, or whatever the equivalent of that is, right? Whatever if it's because you got too angry, anger management, or whatever, right? It's like, but they lock them up like they're criminals, and that's only explored in so much as that is the stakes of the movie, right? That's what happened to Tom Cruise, and we're on his side, so we don't know that happened to him. But there's no actual dialogue on the nature of capital punishment or incarceration or anything. It's just like, fuck them.
I do like that they delay the reveal of what the halo does. Because they do it on the first guy, and he's like, as they're dragging away, he's like, don't put that halo on me! And then, like, we never see what it does until they put it on Anderton. And it just, like, spaces you out, and you're just a zombie. So, I thought that was really interesting.
This movie's way too fucking gross. Way too fucking gross. And it doesn't earn it at all, and it's a through line. It's a immature through line through the whole fucking movie, and it just sucks.
Go on.
Okay, so
you don't. I've got a few I could probably think of. Drinking the rotten milk.
Well, let's start from the beginning. There's a guy with no eyes.
Yeah.
And but it's played up for being like, look at his eyes. It looks like there's gross stuff back there. You know what I mean?
But this is a world where organ transplant.
I'm not saying I agree with you, and I think the concept of a drug dealer having no eye, a criminal having no eyes because he doesn't want to be recognized like that. It's like the idea of a guy burning off his fingerprints or something like that. I like that. That's very cinematic. But the way they show that is just like, bleh, you know what I mean? Like opening your mouth full of food.
So you'd want something a little more subtle, like takes his eyeglasses off.
And just black back there.
Yeah,
you know?
Black. Okay.
Yeah. You got the doctor with the runny nose.
Yep.
And you see his like...
Here's Stormare.
It's like there's no purpose to that. And it's so... And then his like... girlfriend person's like taking a piss, and it's like they show her pee. It's like, why am I watching this woman pee?
It's true.
It has nothing to do with anything.
Yep.
And then the sandwich thing.
That scene is overly gross. That whole apartment complex is disgusting.
Yeah.
But what is that telling us about this DC? It's like, sure, there's no murder, but there is squalor for miles on end.
That's true, and that again.
Do they go a little over the top? Yeah, I think they do.
Well,
I'll agree with you there. But I think it's absolutely for a purpose.
But the thing is, like, I think that's not. That's like whitewashing it a little bit, where it's like it's just gross, but it's like you don't see like what would be more powerful would be if you saw a child who was hungry, or like a dog on the street that was like had no owner, like a starving dog. If you saw a starving dog in this movie, you'd be like, what the fuck's wrong with this city, right? Which is the real inequity of a first world country, right? You have people at the bottom with no fucking thing to prop them up, right? Who are victims of the system, political talk, and then you have the people who have it good. But the movie is not interested in exploring that. They're just like, look at this, there's a bunch of spoiled food in here, and it's like, yeah, throw that shit out, I guess. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I would say that part is a little overly gross, where it takes the bite out of the gross sandwich. I think that's played for a laugh. But yeah, showing just how this city is walking that line between absolutely pristine modern city and like we are still fucking dealing with poverty.
See, and I miss that, but they also do gross stuff with he always has his eyeballs and he's like always like showing them to people and stuff. And then when with the shock baton, he shocks the dude in the neck and he pukes.
Yeah, the sick stick.
Sick stick. So it's like, yeah, it's a cool name. So I feel like the movie glosses over that.
But I mean, the sick stick's supposed to be a non-lethal weapon, right? because this is a world where murder doesn't exist, so they don't have guns. They have like concussion guns that shoot like
force
at you that blow you away. But a stick, that's a real easy way to incapacitate somebody. Yeah, it's pretty gross, but it makes sense for that world, I think.
It does, but I just think that there's this.
Because I don't know about you, but if I'm puking, I can't do anything.
I'm with you. But I just feel like all of the gross scenes, especially the doctor, it just doesn't. Now that you say it, I'm like, oh yeah, I never noticed that the fact that there is squalor juxtaposed with this futuristic city.
Yeah.
I just feel like they don't have the balls to like really address that and really like throw some stuff under the bus societally. They don't want to make it a political statement, so it's just, oh, look at these people are fucking in this squalor apartment, but it's like,
yeah,
they don't have the balls to show prostitution. They don't have the balls to show children suffering. You know what I mean?
Again, somebody like David Fincher, Stanley Kubrick probably would have gone that far, but this, I feel, is nothing against Spielberg, but he knows he's telling this sci-fi story, and he's gonna hint at these things. He can't explore them. Is he gonna go completely over the edge and make this whole thing very serious? Because I think if you make it too serious, then the fun parts aren't as fun anymore. Then the chases kind of lose a little something, because it's like there's bigger issues here. So there's a balance. I think you have to get through. You can't make it Schindler's List and Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I get that. Basically. That's true. He wants to do Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's fine.
Yeah. For me, he gives you just enough that it should the corruption within the system isn't just within pre-crime; it's within the whole city.
Right.
So yeah, to me, it's right in that sweet spot of he addresses it, but doesn't tip the tone too far.
I just wish they made everything less gross so that you could see that better.
All right. So less spoiled milk and more spoiled children.
Yes. Do you have any nitpicks? Or is there anything that doesn't work for you in this movie legitimately?
Nitpicks, I think to me it's a nitpick. The ending does go on a little too long. Like that third act gets stretched just a scene or two too far.
Yeah.
It's just, again, you don't need to cut a lot out of it, and a lot of it is essential. And again, this is a big story. There's a lot they've been working up to it, but there's more efficient ways to get around it. So,
I talked about some stuff. Some of the dialogue is not choices. You'd think we had found a cure for the common cold, cause you get it, cause we're in the future, and it's a wink because this is a futuristic movie.
Yeah.
Come on.
Sure, I can buy that.
Also, they're fighting in that car factory. A car factory in the USA? Science fiction. Science fiction.
It is a sci-fi movie.
And some of those CG plant shots, it's shot very well, but the texture on those plants is not well.
It's 2002 CGI, so for the most part.
Any cool things you want to get into?
Cops still on in 2054. I like it.
Ooh, I just disagree with that. Tom Cruise's grin. Love it. That grinny grin he gives.
Oh, the grin. I thought you said his grin.
No.
That winning Tom Cruise smile just never ceases to fail.
Also, I get that people are like sick of Tom Cruise. He has been a celebrity for many years, but he's a good actor, and only a fool would really deny that.
And we talked about this in which episode did we talk about it?
Whichever one Tom Cruise is in.
We did one of our Tom Cruise movies. We talked about he is never the problem with a movie.
Right.
I don't think. Oh, it was our Mission Impossible episode.
Yeah.
So in our Rogue Nation episode, he is never the problem with a movie. He is always giving his 100%. Whatever you think about his personal life, he's never the issue when he's on and he's working. Mm-hmm. He's always, and he feels like the perfect choice for this kind of movie. Like a young Harrison Ford, too smarmy. If Colin Farrell was the lead, probably too knowing. It's like he's that perfect embodiment of what Anderton needs to be to make the story work. Mm-hmm. Spielberg and Cruise, match made in heaven.
It's true.
Amazing it took them this long to work together.
Some of the dialogue is choices. A fresh choice. Dig up the past and all you get is dirty. Fucking poetry.
It's those nice little character actor lines. Those are the lines that always make a movie just something more special.
Right. Also, the scene where they fight in the car factory is just
very well choreographed, like with lots of action, literally lots of moving parts, but also all kinds of like, yeah, we got these concussion guns, and now we're fighting on a moving platform, and now he's got to avoid the car getting smashed in, and just really great stuff like that.
Also, that highway scene looked fake, but fake in a cool way.
Yeah, again, it's 2002 CGI. You can only go so far, but it's not like completely the worst CGI you've ever seen in your life. There's way worse examples than that. It's not Megalodon 3.
Couple of things before we wrap up. But what is? Couple of things before we wrap up. I do feel like the happy ending is a little bit tacked on, like him getting back with his wife. Like, his son is still dead, he gets his wife.
They get pregnant.
He's like, yeah, and then like the precogs are free, but now murder is gonna be a thing again. It's just like they try to paint it like it's so nice, but it's just like,
True.
It's kind of a weird, like, everything's good. And it's like, is everything good?
Yeah, there's a lot more complicated issues of, now people can murder again. Like, what's that going to do? So, I don't know. I think you can almost end it. So Lamar kills himself. And I think you can deal with, like, the absolute aftermath of that and maybe have a little extra scene, and then that's your ending right there. So.
But I think, again, they've painted themselves into a hole where those characters are slaves, so you have to end the movie with them being set free.
Exactly. So,
and maybe one of them stays on to help. I don't know, but I don't know. It's kind of a movie that they did make it successfully into like a happy movie with a kind of a bizarro ending, but it could have made a more of a better Blade Runner kind of style movie.
I think it totally could, but that's what's interesting about this. I don't feel like it's a round peg in a square hole. Like, I feel like this story fits what they're trying to do. But you could, like we've talked about, you could go a little darker and look at the real issue of the socioeconomic disparity, big word of the day, or you could go more philosophical about, the meaning of fate. There's a lot of ways you can go with this story, and I think it's one of those movies that maybe not quite like 2001: Space Odyssey, but as you gain new experiences, as you learn new things, the movie will mean different things to you. So I think one thing about Spielberg films is they do tend to have one, maybe two interpretations, whereas he's not as abstract as some other filmmakers, where you can really, as you grow, the movie grows. So, but this story does make you think about a lot of different things in a very efficient way.
What this movie is about is human infallibility, right? And how
anything made by humans is inherently flawed because we are inherently flawed,
and can be corrupted because people will look for the corruption.
Yep.
Okay. Could Anderson have avoided the murder?
I think he could have, but I don't think you get as good a story out of it.
Yeah,
So,
I think
the story loses something if he just doesn't kill Leo Crow, and then you wouldn't really have anywhere to go with it. So, because then you don't get Lamar right on the verge of pre-crime national,
right,
and then you don't have the dramatic reveal of him coming out of prison. You don't have. There's a lot of things you don't have.
It would undercut it.
It would really undercut it. So,
I agree. Does precog make the world safer? Yeah,
they do, on one level. On that you can't be murdered,
but you can still be poor.
You can be subjected to drugs. You can be a victim of the system, and you could be living in an absolute slum. So they make the world safer in one way, but that's not the only problem in the world.
No, it's a good point. Do you like? Okay, so big picture. Do you like this movie? It doesn't work.
I do like this movie on a pure just entertainment level. It's a good, fun sci-fi movie, but it's got a lot more in it to give it a lot more weight. It's not like Dredd, the movie Dredd, which I think is just this is an action sci-fi movie. I don't think it really explores a lot of issues. It's just, it works on that level, but you get those really interesting issues we're still dealing with today through a future context that give it a lot more weight and make it something more essential than just summer entertainment, That's what I think.
Yeah, it's a fine movie. It's not a bad movie. It's not evocative, I think, in the way that I wanted it to be. It's just, at the end of the day, it's good. And if you like sci-fi, the way that I like horror. Like, if you're like a sci-fi guy, you're gonna like it. It's a good watch because it's just a sci-fi movie, right? Like, I like a good horror. Any decent horror movie, it's like it's already better because I'm just a fan of the genre.
Yeah.
But it's what I've been saying this whole time, where it's above average, and that I think it works against it in a lot of ways because you're just not being above average is not special. Something that's like bolder with flaws is more special. Something bold that's great is more special. To be good but not great, it's a roundabout argument, but it kind of brings you down.
So you want that steak and you want the sweet mashed potatoes.
Well, and I think I would want more of a challenging movie. I think I want what you're talking about, which is something more about class systems or corruption.
Is that the kind of sci-fi you prefer then? Like, you want your sci-fi to be a little meatier.
I think so.
I mean, I like it just as much. Like, I loved a good... Hey, I've seen 2001 in the theater. So
but I'm also going to get something like Barbarella. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. I think it might be just a case-by-case thing.
All right.
You know?
Yeah, some people they don't like... They think a frivolous sci-fi movie just really isn't worth their time. And every sci-fi movie should be like 2001 A Space Odyssey. Mm-hmm. Like, really exploring these big, heady themes.
So, speaking of Spielberg, is this essential or forgettable in his... collection of work?
I think it's essential because it got him kind of back on track because in the late 90s he kind of had a string of movies that weren't really big. He had Amistad.
Well, that's like a award movie.
Oh yeah, but it didn't win any awards.
Fair enough.
This was kind of his return to like really big summer blockbuster with big stars, big ideas, very entertaining, universally beloved movie. Like, it has its detractors, but for the most part people really enjoyed it, and it kind of got him back on track and kicked off what I think is his modern era of movies. Mm-hmm. So I think it is essential in his filmography it was the first door into what a lot of the themes he's exploring in this is movies he's been exploring throughout, or themes he's been exploring throughout the 2000s. So yeah, I think it's essential.
I think that it's not essential. I respect your opinion.
You better.
I think this movie shows the pitfalls of movie making, right? You make a movie about the future, a future world that feels lived in, that feels researched, that feels, that's hard. Yes, making like a convincing sci-fi world is hard. And they did it. But it doesn't connect, I think, so the movie ends up not working fully, and it's kind of a scary idea that you can make a good movie, but if it doesn't connect fully, then it doesn't really matter, because like you can put all this work in, things can be good, performances are good, effects are good, generally the thriller element of good, but the underlying thematic thing doesn't come together, and then the movie doesn't really work as good as it could have worked. And that's a scary thought, right? Because you think of when you think of problems with the movie, it's like, oh, the effects were bad, or this one plot point was bad, but we could have fixed that, or the performance is bad, but all those things are fine. I don't know. I think there's a good lesson in that. You know what I mean? That it's hard to do.
If I were to ever make a movie book, I'd want to make one called Solid Eights. And I want to talk about movies that are solid 8s and why they're solid 8s, but why aren't they 9s and 10s?
Right.
And maybe for me, this movie's not in that, but for you,
I think it is.
I think it is a solid 8.
Right. So, but it lacks that little extra bit.
I think that'd be an interesting book,
or at least a blog.
Or a blog. Yeah, sure.
Do you have any additional precog visions?
I've visioned me getting some lunch later today because I'm getting hungry.
I'm going to pass out on the floor here. I will say Minority Report is a cool name.
It is a good name. Like, you're not going to mistake it for anything else. And it's one of those titles, what else would you call it? I can't think of another name except Minority Report. And it's interesting because the Minority Report kind of isn't that big a plot point in the movie. Like, it's one of those just little things in it. But it just tells you everything you need to know about the movie. So... And it's one of those things when a technology comes out of this movie into the real world, people are like, Minority Report. He's
Yeah.
Minority
Yeah.
Reporting there on CNN with his hologram.
The thing with the technology I want the most is I want a machine that makes little balls that you could engrave names on, and it sends it down a little ramp.
Those are some exquisite wood balls.
Kev, thanks for coming over here. Let me make you a little ball real quick. Did I
Yeah.
spell your name right? All right, here we go.
You only put one T in it. Damn it.
Throw it away. That is it for us. Now time for the credits. Kev wrote this episode. I hosted this episode. Kev hosted this episode. Jeff Russell wrote it. I mean, the music he wrote. Like my precog vision is not right on that.
Well, you disagreed.
That's it for us. Join us next time. Thanks for coming out. We'll see you in the future, but perhaps sound speeds.
Speed.